What really happened in those final moments after the game ended? The stadium lights were still blazing. The crowd had barely stopped cheering. And then, the ambulance arrived. Not near the parking lot. Not at the staff entrance. Directly at the field-level tunnel, where Shohei Ohtani was being carried out on a stretcher, a bandage wrapped tightly around his left elbow, his face turned away from the cameras that were already scrambling to capture what no one had expected to see tonight. Freeman was there. Tucker was there. Both men walked alongside the stretcher, not saying a word to the press, not acknowledging the questions being shouted from every direction. This wasn't a precautionary exit. This wasn't routine. The people closest to Ohtani knew something serious had happened, and for several terrifying minutes, so did the entire baseball world. But here is what nobody is talking about yet. The umpires didn't just watch. They investigated. And what they found behind home plate that night has sent shockwaves through every front office, every dugout, and every press box in Major League Baseball. To understand how this moment unfolded, you have to go back to the top of the inning. Ohtani had been dealing all night. His command was sharp. His velocity was where it needed to be. Anyone watching closely could see that he was locked in, the kind of locked in that makes opposing hitters look foolish, the kind that makes managers nervous on the other side of the field. But baseball, as any veteran of the game will tell you, is not just played between the white lines. There is a layer of strategy, of psychology, of physical pressure, that happens every single pitch, and most of it happens at home plate, in the interaction between a pitcher and a catcher that the average fan never thinks twice about. That interaction, on this particular night, would become the center of a controversy that nobody saw coming. Midway through the inning, Ohtani delivered a pitch and followed through completely on his release. Standard mechanics. Nothing unusual. But something happened at the plate, a collision, a disruption, moment of contact that didn't sit right with the dugout, didn't sit right with the coaching staff, and within minutes, would not sit right with the umpiring crew either. Ohtani stepped off the mound. He flexed his left arm once. Then again. Manager Dave Roberts was already moving toward the dugout steps. That was the moment everyone realized this was not a normal stoppage. Roberts didn't wait for the inning to end. He came out immediately, spoke briefly with Ohtani, then turned toward the home plate umpire with a look that, according to multiple witnesses in the press box, was unlike anything they had seen from him this season. The umpire crew convened at home plate within minutes. What they were examining was the catcher's conduct, specifically, whether there had been deliberate interference with Ohtani's follow-through. In baseball, this kind of play exists in a gray area. Catchers are permitted to move. Catchers are permitted to frame, to shift, to reposition after a pitch. But there is a line, a clear line, between repositioning and deliberately placing yourself in a position that causes physical harm to a pitcher who is completing his natural motion. The umpires reviewed the play. They consulted with each other. They looked at the angles available to them on the field. And then they made a ruling that Roberts had been demanding from the moment the play happened. The finding was significant. The catcher had moved in a manner that was deemed outside the normal scope of play, a movement that was not accidental, not incidental, but deliberate. The word used in the formal review, according to sources with direct knowledge of the situation, was interference. Not a borderline call. Not a judgment that could reasonably go either way. Interference. The crowd, already confused and unsettled by the ambulance outside the tunnel, erupted. By the time the umpires completed their initial review, Ohtani had already been taken off the field. The image that spread across every social media platform within the hour was striking in its stillness. Ohtani, who carries himself with a calm and composure that has become almost legendary among people who follow him closely, was lying on that stretcher without expression. Not grimacing. Not speaking. Just still. Freeman, who has played alongside Ohtani long enough to understand his routines and his thresholds, looked visibly shaken. Tucker, whose competitive fire is evident in virtually every at-bat he takes, looked the same way. Neither player spoke to reporters in the immediate aftermath. Their presence alone, walking alongside that stretcher, communicated everything that needed to be communicated. The bandage on Ohtani's left elbow drew immediate attention from medical professionals watching the broadcast. A former team physician, speaking on a post-game radio program, noted that the placement of the bandage suggested soft tissue involvement, not a fracture, which would have been stabilized differently, but something in the ligament or tendon structure that warranted urgent evaluation. The word that no baseball fan ever wants to hear in connection with a pitcher's left arm began circulating almost immediately. The Dodgers organization, for their part, released a brief statement confirming that Ohtani had been transported to a medical facility for evaluation and that further updates would be provided when available. It was careful language. It was controlled language. But it was not reassuring language. Dave Roberts held his post-game press conference under conditions that were, by any measure, extraordinary. He had just managed through one of the most chaotic endings to a game that his tenure has produced. His best player had left the field in an ambulance. His coaching staff was scrambling. And now he was standing in front of cameras, choosing every word with the precision of someone who understands that whatever he says in this room will be replayed, dissected, and quoted for days. But Roberts did not deflect. He did not retreat into the careful non-answers that managers typically offer when situations are still developing. He addressed the play directly. He addressed the umpire's ruling directly. And he addressed the conduct of the opposing catcher with a frankness that surprised everyone in that room. He said, clearly, that what happened at home plate was not baseball. That there is a standard of conduct expected between players, a mutual understanding that physical harm is not a tactic, and that what occurred tonight had crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed simply by calling it competitive play. He did not use the word dirty. But he did not need to. The implication was clear to every reporter in that room, to every broadcaster replaying the clip, and to every player on both rosters who would be watching those comments before the next game. Roberts also confirmed that the umpiring crew had communicated their findings to the league office, and that a formal review process had been initiated. This is not the end of the matter, he said. This is the beginning. Here is where the story becomes more than just a single incident. After the game, analysts began pulling footage, not just from this game, but from previous matchups. What they found was not a random, isolated contact. What they found was a pattern. In 3 separate plate appearances across 2 previous games, there had been moments of unusual catcher movement that had gone unnoticed, unremarked upon, and uncalled. Small moments. Moments that, taken individually, could be explained away as repositioning, as instinct, as coincidence. Taken together, they told a different story. This is the part of baseball that most fans never see and most broadcasters never discuss. The physical game, the real, ground-level physical game, contains 100 small acts of aggression and dominance that never show up in a box score. Catchers know this. Pitchers know this. Managers know this. And when those acts cross from gamesmanship into something that sends a player to the hospital, the league has an obligation to respond with more than a warning. The question now being asked in clubhouses across the sport is not whether this incident was intentional. The umpires have already answered that question. The question being asked is whether the punishment, when it comes, will be proportionate to what happened, or whether this will become another example of the sport's tendency to absorb these moments quietly and move forward as though they never occurred. Ohtani's status for upcoming games remains officially uncertain. The medical evaluation that took place after the game was described by sources close to the team as thorough and ongoing. The specific nature of the elbow injury has not been confirmed publicly, and the Dodgers have been careful not to characterize its severity in either direction, neither minimizing it nor escalating it beyond what the current evidence supports. What is known is this: Ohtani did not return to the stadium after being transported. Freeman and Tucker, who accompanied him initially, returned separately. The clubhouse, by the time reporters were admitted, had a quiet to it that is distinct from the quiet of a loss. It was the quiet of a team that is waiting for information it is not sure it wants to receive. The league office confirmed that the incident has been flagged for review under existing rules governing player conduct and physical interference. A formal disciplinary process, if initiated, would involve review of all available video evidence, statements from both dugouts, and the umpiring crew's official report from the game. The timeline for that process is not fixed. But the pressure to move quickly, and to be seen moving quickly, is significant. This is Shohei Ohtani. He is not simply a player. He is, at this moment in baseball history, the player, the one around whom the sport has organized much of its commercial identity, its international expansion, its claim to relevance among a generation of fans who might otherwise be looking elsewhere. Whatever the league decides in the coming days, it will be watched carefully. Not just by Dodgers fans. Not just by baseball fans. By everyone who believes that the sport's ability to protect its greatest players is a measure of how seriously it takes itself. Darvish once said that what makes the best players exceptional is not what happens on the field during the game. It is everything that happens before the game even begins, the preparation, the discipline, the quiet commitment to a standard that most people never see and never fully understand. Ohtani has lived that standard every single day of his professional career. From the cafeteria routines that his teammates could barely keep up with, to the training sessions that begin before the cameras arrive and continue long after they leave, to the composure he has shown in moments of pressure that would break lesser athletes. That composure was tested tonight in a way that no preparation could have anticipated. The ambulance, the stretcher, the bandage, the investigation, none of this was part of anyone's plan. But how the league responds, how the sport responds, how the people around Ohtani respond, will say something lasting about what baseball values and what it is willing to protect. The full update on Ohtani's condition, and the league's ruling on the catcher's conduct, is expected in the coming days. What that ruling says, and what it doesn't say, will matter far beyond this one game. Stay with us. Because this story is not finished.